Hello everybody, my name is Okumwale. I'm posting a video to discuss one of my favorite TV shows, Star Trek. In particular, Star Trek Next Generation. That's what I'll be speaking about today, and I'll touch on Star Trek DS9 as well. Not so much Voyager, and because I don't want to bore you. I believe Star Trek Next Generation is typical of the level of racism that is shown by most TV that I see coming out of England and from America. But we'll have to stick with America because that's where Star Trek is made. The racism that is shown, it is not the overt racism that you're going to get some numbskull displaying down the local pub, on Friday, in fact, any time in England, in certain parts of England, any time, just on a Friday evening. We're going to have someone who's going to be there hurling out abusive words that are very derogatory and very prejudicial. It doesn't show the racism in that way because that would be too obvious. I believe, in fact, I don't even believe that the writers of the show are showing this racism consciously. I believe it is being done subconsciously. They're not aware of it. They do not know how somebody like myself will see this show or perceive the racism in this show because they themselves are Caucasian. And they haven't been raised in a world that is hostile towards them in general. So, racism in Star Trek, it's quite simple really, but subtle. The reason I say one of my favorite TV shows is actually racist is because the people in the show who are of African descent are in minuscule roles. They're in grunt, blue-collar roles. In Next Generation, the predominant people of African descent, or at least those are in major roles, not extras, and when I mean major roles, they're in pretty much every single episode of the 7 years, for Next Gen. They're in blue-collar roles. So you have Geordi, who is the mechanic, basically. Yes, I know that on the ship he's a chief engineer, but basically he's a mechanic. He keeps the ship working. When they need to go faster, when they need someone to do some hands-on work, they call Geordi. The other character of African descent who has a major role in that show is Worf, and he's a security guard. Now, don't be fooled. Don't think that because they're on a ship that is based on the 24th century, so everything is so, wow, impressive and amazing. It's a TV show. And they are basically a mechanic and a security guard. The Caucasians, the major Caucasians, the main Caucasians, we have Captain Picard, who's a captain, so he is the man in charge. He's cool, he's educated, he's refined. Now, Geordi, the mechanic, is also cool. He's educated, he's a little bit street, you can hear a bit of the African-American dialect and mannerisms and all that kind of thing, which of course on TV is never really promoted in a positive light. It's usually comical. But he's a mechanic. He's not in any authoritative or commanding roles, even though he's the chief mechanic he takes his orders from the man upstairs, which is Captain Picard. Worf, well, he's just basically an animal who walks on two legs, and he's a security guard because black men were very aggressive, and we like to fight. Of course, I'm no indication of that. But anyway, apparently that's what we like to do. So that's why that particular African has got that role, and he is promoted as this wild, animalistic figure who's constantly having to be restrained by his Caucasian commanders constantly, and he strives to be more like his Caucasians commanders and society that he wanted to join. He actually turned his back on his own people to become a part of this Caucasian society. Because make no mistake, the Federation is absolutely Caucasian. It's completely European. Of course, there are Africans and people of other races, and I do mean races, other planets, who are part of the Federation, but the ideals, the infrastructure and everything is quite European. And Worf strives to be more like that. And on several occasions he has to turn his back on his own people. But let's face it, they're just savages. Sound familiar? The next one is Star Trek Deep Space Nine. But that's actually my favorite one because I could relate to the captain in as much as single father raising his child by himself. I've been there. I've done that. It's not easy. Yeah. So Deep Space Nine was my favorite because at last I thought when it came out, we have a leader, we have an African man on a TV show that is actually going to lead this show. At least that's what I thought. Well, first of all, he wasn't the captain. I think for the first 3 years, he was a commander. There was no captain because remember he had no ship. Not like all the other Star Treks. He looked after a station. So he was a commander. They did eventually make him captain. And this captain was nothing like Picard. Picard, cool, refined, scholarly. Sisko, Captain Sisko, as he later became, 4 years later, in fact, was also, he was kind of wild. And I mean wild as in aggressive. The amount of times you'd see him go, chief. I know that's a very common image, for men like me. We've got we're wild, we're aggressive. So the amount of time you'd see Captain Sisko or Commander Sisko gritting his teeth, grabbing people, roughing them up. I mean, I watch these shows, Star Trek. I watch them a lot. So when I say that he was out of character for the lead role, for the commander to behaving in this way, trust me, it was out of character. But he was of African descent, so perhaps they thought it was okay because that's what African guys are like, right? Yeah. But that's one thing. They made this commander and eventually captain wild and aggressive. The second thing was that he had a wife, and she lasted about 10 minutes before she was killed. They killed his wife. Beautiful lady. Because when I first saw this, I thought, wow, I mean, it's so rare to see an African man, an African woman, and a child together in a normal family on TV. I thought that was just for the Cosby Show, isn't it? There's no other show really shows it. I mean, okay, Bernie Mac, okay, Fresh Prince, Okay, other comedy shows, but no drama. So, but anyway, they killed her immediately. So he was then a single parent. A single parent is not a positive way to live. We know that there are some amazing parents out there. I know some amazing mothers, some amazing fathers who do wonderful work. But it's not a positive image to portray. Yes? So that's him. Wild and aggressive, single father. Okay. The next thing, which is so telling, is that if you look back in some of the imagery, the marketing imagery that is created for the shows, the first few years, if you looked at the imagery, you would not know who was actually the star of the show. Because usually the star of the show, bam, right up in front, bam, center. That's the person in charge. And with DS9, the character Cisco was usually just off to the side there, or, it's never centered. It wasn't obvious who was the captain. It wasn't obvious who was the main person in the show, when it was really his show. Anyway, that's really it. I mean, we've been going for over 10 minutes now. My goodness, I'm so sorry. But that's really it. It's just this level of racism. It's subtle, and as I suggested, it may not be done on purpose. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who will suggest it's done on purpose, my brother. It's on purpose. Okay, perhaps it is, but perhaps it's not. It's quite possible. Oopsie daisy. It's quite possible that the writers of the show have really just portrayed these people as they see them. Mm-hmm. I don't expect a Caucasian to sit down and say, now I've got to do my jolly best to make sure that this person here, this black, African, Caribbean, West Indian person, doesn't look negative in any way. I don't expect Caucasians to do this. I think it's ridiculous to expect this. People should look after themselves. That's what I tend to think. So it's possible that it is subconscious. That's it. Yeah, thank you.